Free Russia Foundation was established in December of 2014 with a mission to coordinate efforts of pro-democracy Russians to push for positive changes in our home country. So we assist Russian pro-democracy movement, civil society, independent media. We also inform Western policymakers about situation in Russia and help them to formulate a smart long-term strategy on Russia. And we serve as a bridge between pro-democracy Russians and the West. We are very proud as Free Russia Foundation to be able to continue the legacy of Senator Jackson to promote democracy and human rights. We also know that Senator Jackson was very supportive of Soviet dissidents. And we are, at Free Russia Foundation and similar organizations, we are new Russian dissidents. And that's why we are very actively engaged into promoting Magnitsky Act and Global Magnitsky Act, which are ideological heirs to that famous and landmark Jackson-Vanik Amendment. We also know how Senator Jackson believed in people, in ordinary people. He believed that they should have power, they should have voice, and this is what we do. We give voice to pro-democracy Russians, both domestically and internationally.
Center for Climate and Security's work has been supported by the Henry M. Jackson Foundation, including the Sea Level Rise in the Military's Mission Report, the Climate and Security Advisory Group recommendations, Climate and National Security Forum. These were instrumental in directly contributing to the biggest climate policy success in 10 years, and the Langevin Amendment to the 2018 National Defense Authorization Act. That amendment, it labeled climate change as a direct threat to national security, and it called on the Pentagon to issue a report on critical climate change vulnerabilities to their mission. And it was passed with extraordinary, at least for these times, bipartisan support, and it was signed into law. And this really lays the foundation for what will hopefully be a broader bipartisan movement to support comprehensive climate policy, both for mitigation and adaptation in the United States. The foundation has also supported a state event at the Citadel in South Carolina, and this was complemented by a briefer on the vulnerability of South Carolina's coastal military assets and communities. And this was really important for shoring up support for climate resilience in the 2019 National Defense Authorization Act. It's worth also noting that this event occurred shortly before a series of hurricanes led to billions of dollars in damage to military infrastructure throughout the region. And this was a point that was just emphasized by military leaders at the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing. So the word is out and the message is getting through. I think these are, concrete climate policy victories and otherwise, I would say to a certain extent, victoryless issue over the past few years. And you all can take credit for helping to make that happen. And I think punching way above your weight.
So this past fall, MBR produced a 204-page report, which involved 80 experts in the US, 30 experts in the Asia-Pacific region to study what are the levels of cooperation between China and Russia, and what are the strategic implications for that cooperation to the United States. With the Jackson Foundation's support, we were able to condense that longer report into 4 pages, including congressional recommendations that members and their staff can take in order to address the growing cooperation between China and Russia. There are still those familiar on the Hill about Senator Jackson and his legacy of what he accomplished there. But as we continue to talk to the younger generation, some of that institutional memory is being lost. And so we pride ourselves, and when we do introductory meetings, briefings, we like to include our history with Senator Jackson and the Jackson Foundation to continue breathing life into his long and treasured legacy.
As a board that is stewarding the legacy of Senator Jackson, I would like to just share that I believe his legacy is very strong and alive in this younger generation. The importance of environmental protection, as an example, is one of the core animating issues for this millennial cohort. And we've had our Republican co-chair this past cycle, Carlos Curbelo be one of those leaders creating a coalition and trying to bridge the divide on an issue like climate change. So that environmental legacy, we're doing our best to carry on in this next generation. And the second thing is Senator Jackson's interest in consensus building. We believe that's essential to a functioning democracy. And we need to help exercise those consensus building muscles among millennials today. And that's one of the reasons why we exist. So all just to say that we're doing our best in the ways that we can to really steward and grow Senator Jackson's legacy. And we're really grateful for the opportunity to do so.
What the Jackson Foundation Leadership Fellows Program offers is a framework for young folks to keep servant leadership principles woven in throughout everything that they do and help instill those through the program, and then through the alumni activities, keep that alive, keep them reflecting on how they're applying those leadership principles, how they're reflecting on them, how they're passing them on to others, and really just creating this active dialogue amongst alumni so that they can stay focused on what those values and principles look like for them in their work. We know that that society and our country are experiencing very complex times right now, with many different intersecting issues coming together in our community and in our society. And the leadership principles we found, I think, throughout the program are really timeless. There's something that we can apply to a different generation, and they are still very relevant, and just the context may look different, but I think that's also a really unique aspect of the program.
It's one that has changed not only the experience of my life, but also the experience of my students as well. The way I think about how I interact with my coworkers, the way that I think how I interact with my students' families, all of that has changed since matriculating through the program. I have never been in a situation to where I've had so much access to people who are going through the same problems that I am, and people who have already gone through those problems. So not only do I have solidarity with my fellow cohort members, but also I feel incredibly supported by the Jackson Foundation staff. When I first came to the program, I was really looking for guidance. But what I found was family. You know, when I got into my cohort, there were so many instant connections, so many different walks of life that came together for one common purpose, and that was to become better servant leaders. And those relationships that have been founded in the idea of being lifelong learners and servant leaders have really transcended the 9 months of the fellowship in such meaningful ways that I couldn't even begin to mention in this video.
Learning more about Senator Jackson, who was incredibly articulate, skillful, and guided by principles that I also believed in. One of the things that the network has really stressed is being cohesive. What's encouraging to me is that the alumni network keeps getting bigger, and there's a lot of energy being put into keeping the alumni network connected, both within the cohorts that we learned through, but then also as a larger network. As that happens, I can see infrastructure built into our city of people who are really interested in communicating across any sort of divides. We're learning how to build the skill sets for communication across class, across political barriers, across religion and sex and gender and race and all the important things that we need to be able to communicate across, connecting us to each other and then also connecting us to the values of Senator Jackson.
The Leadership Fellows program is creating a community of practice around Senator Jackson's leadership values and principles. So it gives us a chance to both learn about those methods of collaborating, of being open, of considering different viewpoints, of coming together to create solutions. It gives us a place to share in a cone of silence environment the challenges that we're facing in our leadership practice, as well as a place to hold each other accountable to building something larger than just ourselves or just something that we're going to experience in our lifetime. There are so many ways beyond just the trainings, the workshops, the opportunities to learn new skills, but also in the community that's there, in both the cohort that I was involved in as well as in the broader network, in working with the Henry M. Jackson Foundation staff and the board There are so many ways in which these people and these new approaches and new tools have influenced and changed the course of my career for the better, and also helped me navigate when things are more difficult or when challenges are approached that I wasn't prepared for. It's been an invaluable community, it's been an invaluable resource, and it's also something that I see myself being involved in throughout the rest of my career.